Yeah, so this is a really this is a strange talk because I didn't pick it, I didn't come up with it, it wasn't my idea, I didn't ask for it, I've never done it, and so I started thinking, of course, well, what the basic angle could be, as Robert was saying, we have done already a couple M&As in the current sort of role that I'm in, and of course that's a little bit of a disclaimer. There's an Ericsson logo on these slides, and I do M&A as part of my day job, but this is just me talking because I figured last thing I need to do is tell you something official. Now myself, I have been a CTO, a CEO, and a GM. I've been an entrepreneur, angel investor, and stuff like that. Embarrassingly, I've raised about $400 million in my lifetime from VCs. And then I've been involved in about another $500 million in sort of deal structures, and I've been on M&As from about $1 million to $6 billion. Now, today then, from a topic perspective, I thought I'm only going to talk about really how to think about either acquiring companies or being acquired, and how to sort of do it right. I'm only going to talk about technology companies, even though I do make a few references to donut shops in the presentation. And I'll largely stay at a philosophical level for valuation and negotiations, in that we could spend days or years sort of talking about that. And then I won't talk about cases where it's been done wrong or sort of anti-pattern behaviors, but as pretty much everyone sort of has noticed, there's not a lot of, I don't know, I mean, who here can think of a good technology acquisition? Anyone? Anyone think of a good one? Like we were just like, oh man, it's so, yeah, what's that? Sun buying Cray Business Systems. Who's that? No, it's a joke. I made it funny. I made a tech funny. No, yeah, that was good. That was good. Any other ones? YouTube was a really good one. Yeah, that was Apple and Next. Yeah, well, geez, that was a phenomenal one. So there's good ones. And then just out of curiosity, if we get a sort of show of hands, I mean, who's working at a company now that does, say, like over $1 billion a year in revenue? Okay, and then how about people in sort of the 100 million, $1 billion range? And then is everyone else sort of sub-ish 100? The smaller mom and pop shops doing a startup, doing some fun things like that. How many don't? Yeah, how many don't care? And by the way, feel free to shout out during the conference. I actually really enjoy that because then we can have a little bit of a dialogue about it. But no, there's a ton of I don't know. Was Salesforce doing Heroku a good one? That's been okay. What's that? Yeah, it was for me. Yeah, welcome. Thank you. All right. So the what starts out pretty simple. I mean, what I sort of love is, of course, the original Latin word for merge is to dip and plunge. And then, of course, we have acquire, where you actually buy and obtain an asset. Now, the funny part is, of course, is that mergers are what equals do. Typically, acquisitions are what large companies do to small companies. And so, for example, you merge with a spouse and you acquire your children type sort of way of thinking, right? Now, legally, they're basically the same. Legally, they're basically the same act. That's why they're always coupled together as M&A. You don't talk about mergers or acquisitions. At the end of the day, you're buying shares of a company. So that's fundamentally what you're doing. But that tends to not really describe how things are supposed to sort of go right or go wrong. I mean, practically speaking, you're buying assets, which of course in technology is typically a code base or data center facilities or something like that. you're buying capabilities, and you're buying people. And there's a key reason sort of why, and it's somewhat simple. You don't have those assets, those capabilities, or those people. That should really be the main driving force behind doing it. Even though I know of several examples of one company buying another company just to shut the company down. So you do have evilness occur like that as well, or smart, depending, I guess, on your whether you believe in God or the devil. And then, of course, there's a little bit of uniqueness in this as well, in that you should be looking for unique people, you should be looking for unique capabilities, you should be looking for unique assets. And the reason I pull this up, put this forward is because, particularly, myself having gone from big company, smaller startup, big company, smaller startup, big company, when you're sort of in a position of actually buying things in a larger company, you're just shopped stuff like all the time. And it's usually a banker showing up and saying, we have 20 people interested in this, and you got to do something in the next week, and you got to sort of do this, and you got to do that, and you got to tell us this, and you got to tell us that. And they have just straight up frozen a turd and just started polishing away to make it nice and shiny. I mean, it's really amazing sometimes. You dig a little bit deeper, and it's 4 people living in the basement of their VC, eating cans of beans, trying to keep some really awful Java sort of code base still sort of alive and well. So if you're sitting there either on the side where you might be acquired someday, and of course you shouldn't walk around thinking that way, just like you shouldn't walk around looking for love, because you'll never find it. The similar thing in the sense if in a large company, this type of role, you should never be like shopped to. Right, you're looking for something unique, and it's better to do nothing and to save your money and to just live a life, drinking Louis XIII and Hennessy and going to Vegas every weekend type sort of life, which some people, particularly in somewhat cash-starved companies that start having good years, the money just burns a massive hole in their pocket. But then you look at someone like an Apple that's got a massive amount of money, and they're very judicious, sort of about it. Now I have 2 theorems that I'll show you. Oddly enough, the first one's also called the CAP theorem. Amazing. And then the other one's really around very sort of simple algebra. And so we said already, capabilities, assets, and people. Those are the 3 things. Now, of course, the challenge is you only get 2, just like the actual CAP theorem. The challenge, of course, is just like how network partitions happen, people happen. And so you're rarely going to pick up a company that doesn't have people in it. And so, in fact, usually what you're looking at is either capabilities or assets, plus a very good group of people that go along with that, right? And when we start thinking around capabilities and people, this is usually a company that started out as a services organization. They're doing work for hire. They're doing sort of services. And if you're a services company, whether you're a global services part or an Accenture or something like that, you're looking for a unique group of people that have a unique set of sort of capabilities. And then there are product companies that have assets, at least at the very least sort of a code base in terms of what you're doing. And those are essentially, particularly when you're looking at smaller companies, and usually smaller meaning under $100 million a year in revenue, they're pretty much one or the other, right? It's either an asset or a capabilities company. Now, yes, there can be an asset-only sale. That's possible. In technology companies, it's called a fire sale. Meaning that basically everyone has left and there's something sitting there and you pick it up for practically nothing and you bring it in and maybe it becomes some component. There's also a people-only sale, and in technology companies that's called an acqui-hire, which is also sort of the don't be embarrassed that you have great people but failed to build a unique product signing bonus hire, which is usually, and if you've been acqui-hired, this isn't meant to be offensive in any way, shape, or form, but you did fail to build a unique product, and it's nothing to be embarrassed about. And I've done this in God, I mean, I think probably 75% of companies that I personally invested in have been acqui-hired. And each time it's not what's covered in the news. It's sort of nothing to be proud of. And like anyone here work at Yahoo? Yeah, you guys are awful. Sorry, not you. But the acqui-hire approach there, I tell you. I've never seen an acqui-hire where an asset survived. That's part of what I'm saying. And then usually when you buy an asset, you better have capabilities to sort of go along with it. And then usually when you buy capabilities, you'd better have assets that go along with it. And then of course, when you're trying to buy capabilities, you should augment them with other capabilities. And that means you're using sort of the dirty business word, synergy, because you're actually trying to build a synergy case. Just out of curiosity, anyone know the opposite of synergy? Okay. Well, synergy though means you add two things together and it's more than the addition of it. And you'd think the opposite of synergy would you add two things together and it's less than the additive effect. There's actually no English word for the opposite of synergy. They just call it negative synergy, I guess. I mean, I literally there was like a month-long conversation with an M&A team once. It's like, is it anternergy? Is it, but there's no opposite of synergy. It's just negative synergy. And so the idea of being on a synergy case is you're actually taking assets and you're pouring it into a machine that you have that the acquired company did not have, and where you're actually taking those assets and pouring them into a capabilities machine to, say, address a different market or really sort of address the market that you're currently in. And so again, depending on sort of what situation you're in, it is as simple as thinking no different than content and content distribution. You can be a movie maker or a movie distributor. You do sort of need one another, and you sort of understand what your strengths are, and you grab unique movies and you pump it into your distribution machine and you put it in theaters and you sort of go. Or you sort of do the opposite. Now, a synergy case should most importantly mean that the acquirer will make more money with the acquired assets or capabilities than the acquisition could have done on its own. Like that's an absolute sort of requirement. A synergy case also means that the acquired company gets to make an impact that would have been costly to impossible to do within the time frame required by the market. So maybe they'd miss a market window, maybe they couldn't sort of ride it out for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years for the rest of things to basically catch up. And if that's basically not the case, then it really is impossible to sort of pay any premium. And you in fact see you see this even in some public companies that are sort of sitting around sort of shopping themselves out now to do things, like, I don't know, publicly traded managed hosting companies or something like that. And you sit and you sort of look at effectively what the cash flow of the company is and sort of what it looks like. And if you sort of can't figure out how you're going to basically make more money out of that or how they're going to get sort of a reach that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise, but they're sort of demanding a premium, then those deals just basically never, ever basically happen. They do sometimes, but I think the banking word for that is either, they call them either marks or suckers. That's, I think, the actual technical banking term. It's the mark. Because you'd basically be doing the technology equivalent to buying a donut shop from a friend. That's sort of the idea. And I'm not saying that donut shops are bad or the laundry places are bad or dry cleaners. I mean, these are sort of good businesses, but they're not ones where you sort of get like a 15x on earnings or something like that. It's a donut shop. And so also in technology companies, don't do donut shops. You're not buying donut shops. So that's sort of the capability, assets, people part. And then, of course, the other one really then is where you're trying to actually get people within the context of a company to make a unique experience for their customers that's somewhere between like smoking crack and falling in love type thing. Like they just, I mean, have you seen these lines outside the Apple stores for stuff? I mean, it's a great example of people just coming back over and over and over and over again. And it's sad. I was down in the Apple store in like the San Jose-ish area, and there's literally a Microsoft store right across in the mall, and it's just sad. I also found out, I guess I must have relatively good-sized hands, because that's 6 Plus, man. I can touch it all over with my thumb. I called my wife right away and said I can hold a 6 Plus. But you know, Apple does pretty well. So unique experience, and it's a combination of unique technologies and sort of unique approaches, and so it's somewhat of a twist on our sort of capabilities, assets, and peoples. But it really comes down to this idea that you basically only buy unicorns. You really basically think that if it's not unique, it's really honestly not worth the effort. And that's one of the first questions I usually ask either bankers or people running a company that's sort of coming in, is I have to now basically go and say, from an effort perspective, have them realize that doing M&A is the absolute hardest thing to do within a large company. I mean, you sometimes think it's easy and there's like cash laying around, but the process literally touches every single stakeholder in the company. And there are stakeholders in companies this size that like you don't even, you know, it's like all of a sudden you're just spraying M&A water all over the ground and you just have these worms coming up and you didn't even know these worms existed. Like, hey, I do this and I do this and I do this and I'm responsible for this and I own this, and everyone and their mother basically shows up. I'm going to give you a concrete example of this. Is you look at basically a 23-person company I did. The total team was 164 people, and just the integration team to sort of deal with all this stuff across all the stakeholders was 58 people in a room. You know, that's a lot of people, 164 people, like end to end. And then, of course, it touches every stakeholder. It touches the leadership team. You're talking about it to like the CEO. You're talking about it to the board. And then you're suggesting that you effectively graft this entire new organ into sort of an existing body. It's a lot of work. And so you want to like, I don't know, I don't want to replace a heart. I want like another heart so I can run 2 times faster than the average man type sort of organ graft. And if you're a public company, it very well could affect your market perception and have real financial consequences. You can watch your market cap sort of go up or down, you know, as a consequence of that. And so if we take this in a little bit more detail, right, or sort of second theorem, if you will, it really is along this idea that, you know, business success means that you've created a unique experience for your customers where they're happy to and feel compelled to sort of repeatedly give you money, sort of over and over and over again. And of course, by the way, from a margin perspective, the number 1 and number 2 businesses that do this in the world, actually, from like a contributory margin, number 1 is data roaming, and number 2 is cocaine. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? Yeah, operators make a higher margin on people roaming data than people make with cocaine. That just, wow, says something. Got to take a picture of your food, upload it. Look at a picture of a cat, laugh at it. Like something, lol at a friend. So a large company had better have a unique experience. Like if you're not able to go to other companies and convince them really what's unique about you, and why is it that you have sort of like customers and the reach that you basically have, then you have such a fundamental problem that you need to almost step back from an M&A effort and try and fix that first, right? Because I see a lot of these types of things where it's like, oh, my marriage isn't going well, I'll get a girlfriend, that'll work. Then I'll be happy and everyone will be fine, I just won't tell anyone. You know, and it's a very sort of similar thing. It's like, it's not the problem. You know, the problem is you need to sit down and figure out really what is your unique experience. And then, of course, a small company who's really managed to create a unique experience for their customers will always cost more than one that hasn't, right? So we think of this on both sides. And that unique experience being sort of a combination of unique technologies and unique approaches becomes sort of a really key thing. It's even a good thing when you're looking at startups, when you're thinking about starting a company and so on like that. I mean, these sort of both apply to like M&A, but even as an entrepreneur, you sit down and you say, okay, like what people am I putting together with me? You know, what are we really sort of building? The boring word, assets. What sort of capabilities are we sort of putting together? But then also, what are we really trying to create for someone that's basically as good as like data roaming or cocaine? Because both of those are actually a lot of fun. And then also, and I even sniffed afterwards, I have a cold, okay? I have a cold. I really literally have a rhinovirus. So then it's a similar thing. Now you don't sort of get all these, of course, and when you sort of think about this experience, technology, and approaches, it really is tough to do all three of these in a short period of time. Like it's really actually very normal for companies to in fact spend 10 years, 15 years, 20 years to sometimes really sort of nail all three of these. And so usually you just get one or two done again. And so you have technology companies, which can even be sometimes like more fundamental than a product company. You have people that have been working on what are effectively components in a larger system or so on like that. But then they've managed to basically ship a product and people love it. It means they've created an experience. And again, experience companies are always more expensive and they're always more valuable. And the people always are honestly better in some ways, you know, in some way, shape, or form. It might not be the individual people, but the team that they've put together is better for this. They've managed to basically not just put a technology together, but actually get people inspired by it. Then, of course, you have approach companies, which might start out as a one-person consulting firm, a 10-person consulting firm, or so on. And then if these companies manage to create an experience, then, of course, they're sort of able to do that. So if we come back then to both of these theorems and begin to sort of anchor it, in my opinion, what's really sort of important, where we have these two things of our CAP theorem for M&A and our basic ETA algebra, we're really saying capabilities, assets, and people, this sort of unique set of experience, technologies, and sort of approaches. I mean, I think you know the answer already, and that it is in fact anchored in the people. The people that are there are really the key part. The experience is really sort of like the key part because, of course, companies, in fact, don't innovate. People innovate, companies don't sell. People sell, companies don't lead. People lead, and then, of course, companies don't fight a war. It's the people that fight sort of the war. And so at the end of the day, you really are, in fact, looking for a unique set of people like that. And it's a very good sign if that unique set of people have actually gone and managed to put a unique set of technology and has used a unique experience, and they've actually shipped a product, and they've really built a real sort of asset that's there. And when you start thinking around what really sort of motivates great unique people, because these are then people that you've convinced that this larger company that you're bringing them into won't destroy what they've done, won't break apart the team, won't disrupt it, won't slow them down. I mean, a lot of us that have been entrepreneurs left large, dumb companies to go do something that wasn't large and dumb. And when you're sort of suggesting, come back to stupid, it's always basically tough. And so it really then sort of comes down to really sort of making sure that the mission for what you're doing is exceptionally clear, and that those missions actually sort of like line up, that what they're in fact trying to accomplish and what you're trying to accomplish are one and the same, and then what you really sort of bring to the table as a larger company is impact. You know, so even for example, I mean, I think one of the interesting things I found myself, even at the company that I'm currently at, is it's basically 130 years old. It's in 186 countries. And, you know, we've had some customers for a century. And so the ability to just have something show up in parallel in 186 countries is there. You know, and so you have this sort of impact bit. And so it's really like mission, and both whether you're on the I might be acquired someday side, your mission needs to be exceptionally clear to yourself and your team, and it likely is. It might be unspoken. I don't say you have to make a mission statement or something like that. I'm just saying that all of you have some variation of that sort of story of why you've gone to war together. And then, of course, this idea of impact, like I just stated a potential impact, story like that. Like, oh, hey, you have 2 customers and one sort of thing like that, but did you know that you'd be like huge in Japan, type sort of bit. And then you got to keep these teams together. And in fact, just like most things, it's very attractive to sit down and say, I've managed, because, as an entrepreneur, you're sitting there sort of almost, it sounds disgusting, I was like collecting people. Sounds odd coming out, but you collect people, basically, and you bring together people that want to work together and maybe haven't had a chance to work together before, or worked together before and loved it. Now you're bringing them back together. And in fact, you sit and you say, okay, it's really about sitting here and letting them build their teams and bring people in that they've been wanting to work together for years and they just didn't have a chance to. And so it's really critical that when you start finding a team that fits together, you have to figure out a way within the organization that it really stays like that. And so, because sometimes you see these things where, it's this very like clinical asset buy, and we'll take you up and chop you into 5 parts and put you in these 5 sort of things over there. I think anyone doing a company should always say no to that, because it doesn't make it fun anymore. And then, of course, good teams, great teams are bought. And so, they're motivated by the mission and really the ability that acquire to help them make a significant impact. And in the best case, the acquirer gets something entirely unique in either an existing or a new area where there's not a clear number one and where there's a big sort of machine that can amplify it. That's really what you're looking at on the acquirer side. And in the best case, the acquirer gets basic market and capital access that simply would not be possible if you stayed in the public market space. Meaning there are plenty of things where in large companies you can, in fact, in a rapid, short period of time, go spend $1 billion to do something and win if you think that you can. And you just can't ever raise that amount of money without winning first, basically. And then, of course, in the best case, the synergy case shows a clear path where you can take the risk. It's possible to be the market leader. But again, fundamentally, there actually has to be a people fit. And more than a fit, you actually have to really love the group that you're bringing in and have them really be excited about sort of where they're going. And if there's any doubt like that, I mean, it's a lot like that sort of college girlfriend that you didn't really quite break up with. And next thing you know, you're married, but you always sort of, it's not going to work out, man. It's not going to work out. And if it's still going on, it's eventually not going to work out. Okay, she's going to sleep with your friend. Okay. There has to be a common mission that's inspirational. You actually have to have the ability to make a real impact together, and absolutely everything must be done to basically help that team grow and basically show up every day in the trenches with people that basically take a bullet for. Okay? Now, if you think about some very sort of simple things as we're like wrapping this up on like how to fix not having assets and capabilities of people, we sort of said there is that M&A option, if you will, but there tends to be sort of like stepwise things all the time. So you might have sourcing things where you bring in a technology where you've decided that you basically don't want or need to own that. I found, for example, in a lot of large companies that I worked for that were not worked for, but like partnered with when I was an entrepreneur, that was just so stupid about doing this, where it's like, oh, we love you so much, like you should do this, and we should do an M&A, and no, but we'll sort of partner, but no, we'll sort of do this, and no, we'll sort of do that, and it just turns out they're bad at both of them. They're bad at sort of like a bad partner, and they're bad at acquiring, and they're bad. It's always a good sign when you sit down and a company you're basically sort of working with that's larger says, you know what, you guys really do have something unique. You really do have something we sort of need, but it's really sort of unknown to us whether we can scale that aspect of the business yet, or, there's a couple sort of like known unknowns. I mean, not to sound too Rumsfeldian. And you say, well, but let's figure out a few of these known unknowns. And then we figure it out, we can sort of talk about that, but I'm still going to invest in this, and we're still going to go do it. And you want that to come out of people's mouths, when it's not sort of a pure M&A. There's, of course, also the ability to do it organic, but you have to have the discipline within a company to say that it's totally fine to do it in-house if you have the ability to do it and it doesn't exist. Like you're just making it out of nothing. No one has solved this problem. We think we can solve this problem. And that's a great category. The other one, of course, is if it's going to cost you like $2 billion to do it, but you can spend $200 million to buy it right now. It just doesn't make sense to do it sort of in-house. And so you really have to think about that if there's somehow this time value of money for going to market now. And then, of course, there's, M&A. And I think that, good companies are basically good at all of these at the same time. And it does require having discipline on both sides. It does require having sort of an honest conversation. And in a perfect world, you have a smaller and a larger company, in fact, do go and figure something out together, and you do start actually, and they do partner well, and they do sort of push, and you do that. And then as you work together and like each other sort of more and more, you end up in some sort of permanent type sort of arrangement. Or that big brother basically helps you really launch as an entrepreneur, which is also, in my opinion, required. It's like impossible to ever break through the couple $100 million in revenue, sort of barrier without having a bigger company sort of involved or help in some way without constantly talking about taking you to bed effectively, and so on. Now, if you think about this from sort of the company perspective, like I said, it's really this first one of do we want or need to own this asset or capability? So a good example is you look at things like, let's sort of like, and I see this all the time, like, let's go buy a Linux company. And it's like, well, for what? So we can own Linux. And it's like, do you know what Linux is? We can't own it. Oh, we can't own it? No. Going and buying a company that does Linux doesn't mean you own Linux. And it's like, oh, okay. So can you actually own it? There's a lot of things you can't own. And if you're a product company sitting there buying a support and services company, that's also not something you want to own. Regrettably, a lot of people that just sit and make those things, like, let's go buy Linux. I want to buy Linux. And that's from experience, by the way. Can we do it organically? How much does it cost to do it organically? Is there a market now for this? Are our competitors in the market? Is there a winner yet? There's already like a 1, 2, or 3. Like, honestly, right now, you look at, say, like public cloud stuff, and you have Amazon and Microsoft, Google. If your goal is to like go into that market and compete with them, just pause for a minute, polish your 45, stick it in your mouth, and pull the trigger. And I'm sorry if I apologize if suicide's inappropriate, but not hypothetically. What would be the word for, like? I don't know. I red-eyed in the brain. Yeah, that's right. That's it. Is there a winner yet? Is there a clear number 1, number 2, number 3? What's really the value of going to market now? Does a delayed time to market affect other revenue streams? That's sort of very important. If we don't do this, we're going to lose a lot of money here. And if there is a market now, is there some sort of like inorganic option that's less than the organic cost plus lost revenue from a delayed go-to-market plus risk? Whew. That's the questions. You can even then think of this almost like from a scoring perspective. 3 is a bigger score than 1, of course, and you don't have to. Some of these numbers are like entirely made up, but sometimes within a larger company, you think about things like, and we'll just look at the +3 column. Oh, it would be really expensive for us to do this themselves. The market time is now. The company's making a lot of money. It would really impact our margin. It would cost us practically nothing. It doesn't change our strategy in any way, shape, or form. It really messes with the competition. It really gives us a great market position where people are like, buy that stock, and it's got great high growth potential, right? So you think about that. Now, these are the stuff that you think about like after you figure out are the people you can bring in and do stuff with, and they want to be there. And because there's nothing better than these like acquisition stories where, you know, like the Apple Next was a great example. That saved Apple. You want to do acquisitions like that, and so on. But to sort of wrap it up, then, you know, that's some details, but it really does come to that, you know, capabilities, assets, and people, and you really focus on that people question. Really, what's the team that's there? What kind of people are they like? What are your people like? I mean, if your people in your company are honestly assholes, then you're gonna have a hard time buying nice people. Okay. Yeah. Any former Oracle people here? You know, and then also, of course, when we look at that sort of thing, keep in mind whether you're starting a company or a big company, you're always looking for this, you know, really sort of unicorn experience around it. And if you can find a technology or an approach and they haven't quite done it yet, but you see that in there, then you've just gotten a great deal. And so on. And that's it. I'm done. Thank you very much. And again, I hope that was okay for a talk I didn't even come up with. Do we do like questions or something? Or it's really, you know, it's really intimidating being Brendan's opening act. I mean, this is like Clapton. Eric Clapton? Clapton? What the hell's the guy from Cream? Is it Captain or Clapton? Yeah. Eric Clapton's like Clapton opening for Hendrix, you know. M&A. Brendan's going to talk about good stuff. Do I get off the stage now, Theo? Yes. Okay, thank you.